Welcome to Copper Star Precision, where we're here to help you get more points in the competitive shooting sports. And today we're going to be going over the June Course of Fire for NRL22. Now I'm going to walk through all the stages and give you kind of an idea of my pre-visualization of all the stages. I go through, I look at all the stages, I write down target sizes, I write down my data on previous engagements, and I try and come up with a strategy which then I will go practice with so that when I go to the match, I'm well prepared. So hopefully these tips and tricks and what I do to prepare will also help you prepare. If that's the case, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe below. Let me know if this helps you. So here's stage one, the evolution of the stance. So what I do is I always look at, over here, I look at the targets, right? So we have 1.5 inch and 3 inch targets at 25 yards, 2 and 3 inch at 50 yards, and 3 and 4 inch at 85 yards. And I come over here and I write down the target sizes. Now, if you guys want me to make a video on how I actually convert the distance and inches into, in this case, I'm using mils because my scope is in mils. So I actually write these down. So for example, this T1, which is the 1.5 target at 25 yards, is actually 1.67 mils in diameter, and target 2 is going to be 3.33 mils. Excuse my horrendous handwriting. Why is this important to know target sizes? So if we're going to be doing holdovers, or if we have some wind that we want to take care of, well, we may not even have to hold off the plate. If there's half a mil of wind and the target is 1.67 wide, that means half the target is about 0.8 mils. So if there's half a mil of wind and I hold right edge or I hold left edge, depending on where the wind is going, I should still be able to hit that target. So it helps you visualize and get an idea of what your more difficult targets in the stages are going to be, as well as how much you can get away with in terms of wind holdovers or vertical holdovers if you don't want to dial during the stage. So as you can see, this 85-yard target, the furthest target, even though the larger targets, 3 and 4 inches, they are the most difficult. This 3-inch target at 85 yards is actually the most difficult to hit because it's the smallest in terms of actual mils. And I remember mils are an angular measurement, right? So this target subtends the smallest angle and should be the most difficult to hit. So that when we go through the stage and think about strategy, we know these targets are going to be harder to hit, this 0.98 and this 1.11, than the other targets. So something to keep in mind. So next thing I do is I scroll down, I look at the description here and the diagram, and I actually come in here and I go through and I write down my dope, my data on previous engagements. So I know that on my scope, and you'll have to do this for your scope and your MO and the velocity and the BC and all that kind of stuff. But for me, this is usually 1.2. My rifle is zeroed at 50, so this is 0.0. And this one here is almost 0. It's really like minus 0.1, so down 1/10 of a mil. Now you might be asking me, why do I write down my dope when I'm not at the stage? I don't have environmentals for the day I'm going to be shooting. I have a lot of different rifles and a lot of different cartridges and ammunition in my ballistics calculator, and I don't want to be the guy who goes in there and puts in all of my range data, and turns out my rifle or something is shooting 308 Winchester or 6mm BR or something like that. So I put these down ahead of time when I'm not in the heat of the moment, not at the match, so that when I go to the match and I do calculate this, if this is very different, if I put in 85 yards in my ballistics calculator and I get something way different than 1.2, I know something's off. If it's 1.1, 1.3, that's probably in the ballpark given the environmentals and the conditions. But if this is way off, if this is something crazy, I know I probably am not on the right profile on my ballistics calculator. So this is just kind of a sanity check. I will actually use whatever I calculate during the day using atmospheric conditions, temperature, all that kind of stuff. But I usually just give myself an idea. So anyway, no more of that. That should be pretty self-explanatory. So let's take a look at this stage. So on the start signal, the shooter will engage the targets from large to small in the following manner from the unsupported positions. So first we go prone, then we go sitting, then we go kneeling. So only a sling may be used as equipment. So that is very, so there's a positional stage, only a sling can be used. So what am I going to do? I'm probably going to use the hasty sling technique. If you guys want a video on that, also comment below. I'll make a video on exactly how I plan to tackle this stage. And so we're going to go prone first, so unsupported prone, in terms of the only support being the sling. 85 yards, large to small. So we're going to hit the bottom one and then the top one. So we're going to do 2 shots, 2 shots. Then go sitting at the 25-yard target. So we're going from far to close. So I might even put something like 1, 2, put 2 there, then 3. Just so I have like an order of operations. So we're going to go 1, 2 shots, 2 shots, go to the close target, 2 shots, sorry, 1 shot, 1 shot, and then 3, 2 shots, 2 shots. So that's the stage. Only a sling can be used, which means we're going to have to go practice our sling. So let's talk about kind of strategy. So I come over here and I usually type out a little bit of strategy here. So here I put down, I'm going to dial 1.2, which is the far target, and I'm going to set my parallax to 85 yards. Now remember this bottom, this small target here, this one, is going to be the hardest target to hit because it's the smallest. It's also the furthest. So we got 1.2, dial that in the scope, set parallax, 85 yards, really take our time on this shot. And theoretically, prone, even though it's unsupported with only a sling, it should be the most stable position. We have the lowest center of gravity to the ground. Should be, it should be an easier position to hold steady. So the first 2 shots on this large target are going to be very important to see if there's any change in wind or anything like that. So we're going to definitely pay attention to where our impacts hit if we can. Follow the trace, see where it goes. We're going to do 2, 2. Then I'm going to dial 0. Now I'm not going to dial all the way to -1 just because these targets are so large. Now remember that goes back to what I was saying before, right? The target sizes for the 25-yard targets are 1.67 mils and 3.33 mils. This is huge in terms of mils. So this should be a relatively easy target to hit. So I'm not going to worry about this 1/10 of a mil either way, right? Because as long as I'm holding center, even if I'm 1/10 off the exact dope for this target, it's going to be fine, and it's going to prevent me from having to go redial. So I'm just going to, because these two are so close, I'm just going to dial 0. I am going to take my time to change my parallax, because if I go from 85 yards to 25 yards, it's going to be super blurry, and it's going to be harder to see. So I'm going to adjust my parallax down, and then I'm not going to have to dial when I go to the next 2 targets, right? All I'm going to do is change parallax while I'm kneeling and engage those 2 targets 2 times on the bottom, 2 times on the top. And that's pretty much all there is to this stage. The real challenge with this stage is going to be, how do you use a sling? Because it's the only thing that you can use. And I absolutely insist that you guys use a sling for this stage. And I'm going to talk about different types of slings, sling methods in future videos. So make sure you're subscribed, enable notifications, and we'll discuss those. But this is going to be really difficult unless you're a silhouette shooter or something where you do offhand shooting without slings on the regular. This is going to be a challenge for some folks. So let's make sure we have a good sling technique, which we're going to practice. Okay, so moving on to the next stage, which is called can confirm. So 120-second par time, 10 rounds. Again, I have written the targets sizes down here. So we have a KYL rack. These are going to be the smallest targets of the match, the hardest to hit. These are, again, target sizes in mils. And our 90-yard target is 1.85 mils, so relatively generous. 6 inches at 90 yards is not too terrible. Remember, if you can hold 1 inch, a 1-inch group at 100 yards, that means your rifle is capable of shooting roughly like 0.3 mils, 0.27 mils. So this is very large and very generous. What's going to make this challenging is this KYL rack, right? So let's take a look at what the stage says. Again, I have written down my dope just so I can make sure that I'm in the ballpark when I get to the match. So it's roughly 1.4 for 90 yards and minus 0.2. So description, on the start signal, the shooter will move into a prone position, supported position. So here we get to use our bipod, all that good stuff. So we really have to take our time to set up for the KYL rack. Large to small, hit to move on. So we're going to have to make our hits. Between each hit on the KYL rack, a confirmation shot must be fired at the far target. If you miss a confirmation shot, the shooter loses all points and must start over on the KYL rack. Starting with the largest target, only shots missed on the confirmation target will result in loss of points. So if we make all of them, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Last shots are on this 2 target here. So what's going to be my strategy here? I'm definitely going to dial 0.2, minus 0.2, down 0.2. This is, I mean, this might be different for your rifle. This is what it is for my rifle. So I'm definitely going to dial minus 0.2. I'm definitely going to set my parallax for 35 yards. These targets are the hardest to hit. This is what we're focusing on. If we miss these or we miss a confirmation shot, we're in trouble, right? So we definitely want to make all our shots in the KOL rack. So what we're going to do is I'm going to dial minus 0.2, get a nice prone position, and you know, try and make all these hits. And I'm going to hold 1.5. So the difference between this target and this target, the near and far targets, it's going to be minus 0.2 to 1.4 is 1.6. And let me just scroll up a little bit so maybe you guys can. So yeah, that's 1.4. So 1.4 to minus 0.2 is 1.6. Well, instead of trying to find 1.6 on my crosshairs in my reticle, I'm just going to hold 1.5 because I know there's a hash mark there. And this, again, this is a generous enough target that if I hold 1.5, I'm going to hit this target as long as I'm, you know, making a good hold. What I'm not going to do is reset the parallax between these two because I need the parallax here. This one's going to be blurry, but again, enough wiggle room that I should be able to hit this with the 1.5 hold. That way I'm not dialing parallax, I'm not dialing elevation between these two targets, so I can take my time and use as much time as I can get to get nice clean hits on the KYL rack. I think that's be the most important thing for this stage. So let's move on to the next stage. Can confirm. Nope, that was the stage we just did. Okay, double trouble is the next stage. So again, round count of 12. Okay, so this is new. Not a 10 round stage, it's a 12 round stage. So if you don't have magazine extensions, what you're going to have to do is do a mag change because most rimfire magazines only hold 12. On my CZ457, I do have +3 extended mags, so I won't have to do a mag change. They're introducing these new options for the further options and stressors, mag change required. So if your club does this, you might actually have to do a mag change, but I'm just going to load 12 rounds and not have to worry about a mag change. But if you only have 10 round magazines, expect to do a mag change. We'll talk about when that might be appropriate to do in this stage. Again, I wrote down some target distances. 66 yards, 1.5 inch and 2 inch, relatively small targets. So those ones we're going to have to watch out for. This is also the tiebreaker stage, which means that you get 10 points per impact plus 1/10 of a point for each second. No amount of time saved on this stage, no matter how fast you go, is going to make up for a miss. You would have to have 100 seconds left on the clock to get 10 points, which is basically the value of one impact. So I tell everybody, you know, it's not about the time. I mean, if you're one of the top shooters and you want to rush, that's fine, but you know, it's not going to make or break your score. What is going to make or break a score is a miss. So just keep that in mind. All right, let's look at the stage here. So my dope for the 66 yard target is going to be 0.5 mils and 25 is minus 0.1. So here we're going to go on the start signal. The shooter will engage the targets from large to small with 2 shots each in the following manner. From the center of the tank trap, we're doing the near targets. From the one tip of the tank traps, we're going to the far targets. And from another tip of the tank trap, we're going to the near targets. So 2 different tips must be used. Positions can be shot in any order, so this is a big deal. So this is where, you know, I want you to start thinking about the stage, and this is what I do when I start thinking about the stage. If you look at what I wrote down here, that's the wrong one. Okay, so I wrote down here FNN or NNF. So I want to go far, near, near, or near, near, far, because I can shoot these in any order. I would not go near, far, near. I wouldn't go back and forth twice between the near and far targets, because then I either can dial for the far target and then dial for the near target and then stay on the near target, or dial for the near target, stay on the near target, and then dial for the far target. So I'm probably going to go near, near, far, because the center is probably the most stable position for me as a shooter. You get lower to the ground, lower center of gravity. I think I'm more comfortable on the center of tank trap than I am the tips. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually engage the center near targets first from the center. And the reason for that is if I see any change in wind or anything on the center targets where I'm the most stable, I can make those corrections at the longer targets later, which are harder to hit. So I'm going to go near, near, far, starting at the center, going to the tip, and then the other tip. So I'm going to dial down 1. I'm going to go 2 shots, move to a tip, 2 shots, 2 shots, and since I'm done with all the near targets, I will dial the 0.5. I could hold 0.5, but again, if we go back to our target sizes real quick, the target sizes here, the further targets are actually they're roughly half the size of the other targets. So it's going to be much more difficult to hit those. So I definitely want to dial and make sure I'm holding straight up and making any wind corrections on those. So tank trap, pretty standard prop. You could also dial 0.5 and hold under if you don't think you're going to have time, or you're trying to go for like super speed. Like if you're one of the top shooters, you may want to dial for the far target because it's the harder one to hit, and then hold under the 0.5 to hit the first targets. If you don't want to take that fraction of a second, couple seconds to dial in between. So that's some strategy there. Go to the next stage. Again, I wrote down my target sizes. 2.5 at 100 yards, 0.69 mil target size. Relatively difficult. Let's see what we've got going on. So this is going to be off of the barrel. I can make a whole video about all the different kinds of ways of doing the barrel. I think the easiest way is if you have a full-length Arca rail, you just shift your bipod as close to the mag well as you can and try and put that at the front of the barrel, and then you have enough room for a rear bag. So you've got bipod and rear bag on top of the barrel. I think that's the best way to do this. But we're going to put up future videos of how to tackle obstacles like this. So I have my dope written down here, minus 0.1, 0.1, and 1.8. My face is kind of covering the 1.8, but it's there. So on the start signal, the shooter will engage the targets with 2 shots each from the top of the 55-gallon barrel in the following order: 25 yard, 55, 100, 55, 100. So it's going to be kind of something like, if I go over here and we go like, it's going to be 1, so it'll be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2 shots each. So what did I say I was going to do here? Okay, so I'm going to dial 0, which is halfway between these two. I'm just going to split the difference. These targets are big enough that, again, I can split the difference and it's not going to matter. So I'm going to dial 0 for the first 4 shots. So that's 1, 2 on the first one, 1, 2 on the second one. Then I'm going to dial 1.8. Again, smallest target, hardest to hit. Dial 1.8, 2 shots on that one. And I'm going to go dial back to 0. I could actually dial back to 0.1 if I wanted to be exact. But dialing to 0, if you have a 0 stop, it's much quicker and much faster than trying to figure out exactly what 0 and 0.1 is. Just dial 0. 2 shots here, but dial back to 1.8, 2 shots there. Pretty straightforward stage, especially if you have a full-length Arca rail. You can shift your bipod forward and you can use a rear bag. Very strong support position. This stage should not be too difficult. And then we're going to move to the last stage, which is a very interesting stage. It's one target at 85 yards, 2.5 inches. It's a 0.8 mil target roughly. And if we scroll down to the description here, it's easy because we only have one thing to dial, so we're just going to dial our scope, in my case, for 1.2 mils. But if we look at this orientation, there's a lot of stuff going on here. We've got top of sawhorse, any rung location on the ladder, which is leaning on the sawhorse, the 5-gallon bucket, and the 2 cinder blocks. So, I mean, as far as, strategy for this, it's going to be dial 1.2 and build good positions. That's really all there is to it. This is a stage that I think a lot of people are going to have to practice. It'd be great if you could make these props in your backyard, which I'm going to do. I'm going to build these props. I'm going to practice building positions. The interesting here is the ladder being on the sawhorse. Usually you would put your bag over on the sawhorse, at the back of the sawhorse. But with the ladder in the way, you're going to need a taller bag, or I have some ideas for this, but you're going to have to do 3 shots off of here, any rung, 3 shots off the 5-gallon bucket, which isn't too bad, and then off the cinder blocks. This is going to be an interesting stage because you're going to have to build 4 different positions in the 2-minute time frame. So that's an overview. This is what I do when I see the Course of Fire is published for all of the matches. I go through, I write down my target sizes for all the stages just so I know how much I can get away with in terms of wind, how much I can get away with in terms of holdovers. Like I said, there's a couple examples, in this month's Course of Fire where I can split the difference between two targets, dopes, or I can I can round off to a nearest half mil holdover. So I don't have to be so precise because the targets are large enough that let me do that. And then I come down here, I write down my dope. So when I get to the match, if it's just something way different, I know something's off. I have to check my calculator, make sure things are cool. And then I write little notes to myself about how to run the stage. Now the next phase of this is going to be to go out and actually practice all of these. And that's going to be in future videos. And then I'm also going to have a bunch of videos regarding how to tackle certain barricades, different obstacles, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to do a whole series on that. So once again, this has been Copper Star Precision, and I'm here to help you get as many points as possible in all of your competitive shooting endeavors, from NRL22 to PRS to pistol shooting. So I'd really appreciate it if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, help me grow the channel, share it with your friends who are in the sports, or don't if you don't want them to get an advantage. But hey, this is all about friendly competition, so definitely share this with all your NRL, PRS friends. And then later in the month, I'm going to take a video at the match, and we'll see if all this stuff actually works, and if I am just talking out, talking a bunch of BS, or if I can actually practice what I preach. So stay tuned for that, and until then, as always, happy shooting.